Hello, Ian.
Hello, Alex.
How you doing?
How you doing, mate? Yeah, I'm good.
So you're Ian Briggs,
Yeah.
ex-veteran.
Yeah, 29 years in the Air Force.
29 years.
Yeah.
And why are we sitting here today?
We're sitting here to talk about CMS-related issues and the suicide of my son. Went missing almost 2 years ago. I got a phone call from his fiancée on Wednesday. She didn't know where he was, didn't come home from work. We couldn't contact him, we phoned the police. We spent 3 days trying to find out where he was, and the police found his body on the Friday.
Why?
Nobody knew why at the time. We knew he was having problems with his work Hitachi. But they weren't enough for him to commit suicide. And it wasn't until afterwards, when we found paperwork from the CMS, that we began to realise why he took his own life. I have 3 letters from the CMS, dated over a period of nearly a year. And all 3 letters are basically chasing Gavin for an additional income of £26,000, an arrears figure of nearly £16,000, and on top of that it would appear that the CMS was trying to chase Gavin for CMS payments for 2 children, which he was already paying for by a court order. So basically the CMS was trying to take £2,669 a month out of Gavin's wages.
How much did that leave him to live on?
£153 a month to live on. The 3 letters, basically from what I can ascertain, is he would have got a first assessment. He would have disputed the assessment.
That's what I was going to say. He clearly disputed it and argued his case.
Yeah, because...
So did you have any inkling of this?
No, we knew nothing about it. I knew he was dealing with the CMS, but I didn't know that he had these issues with the CMS. I had no idea at all.
Did he talk to you about what was going on?
That's the sad thing. Gavin used to talk to me about everything. We were like brothers. And he used to talk to me about everything. Until we got to this point and he stopped talking to me.
He sounds like a very strong, proud man.
He was an amazing guy. Absolutely amazing guy. So yeah, it all came out of the blue. So I started trying to figure out what was going on with these letters. So I sat down, worked out what Gavin actually owed, or what Gavin actually earned, and what the CMS said he earned. So I know that Gavin earned in the region of about £54,000 a year. I have confirmation of that. I have his bank statements, I have his HMRC tax returns, and actually the CMS state in one of his letters that he earns 52 grand a year. But the CMS carried out a financial investigation on Gavin. Now, if I didn't know this at the time, we found this out afterwards. The financial investigation is only initiated by a resident parent going to the CMS and telling the CMS that they think Gavin was earning more than he actually was. So basically they wanted more money out of Gavin. So they carried out this financial investigation on Gavin. They came up with an additional £26,000 income on Gavin's account.
Where did they find that from? I mean,
I have no idea.
Surely you have the evidence to prove that's contradictory.
Yeah, I've got all the evidence.
How do they get away? What? I can't understand it.
No, neither can I. You know, he will have told them. He had all the proof. He will have sent them the proof that he wasn't earning 76 grand. He was only earning 54 grand. I've subsequently found out through working with the group that I'm working with and keeping in contact with people on CMS that the CMS will listen to the resident parents. They will take what they say as gospel, they will listen to the non-resident parent, but unless the resident parent confirms what the non-resident parent is saying, the CMS will completely disregard what the non-resident parent says.
What if the non-resident parent has evidence?
The CMS
Contradictory,
disregards it. They disregard it. They must have disregarded it in Gavin's case.
But can't you go to court and argue your case with a judge?
Have you ever been through the courts? They take the side of the resident parent every time.
It's so sad that his father, who loves him dearly, and he wouldn't come to his father. Did he have any other support?
Not that I know of, no. No. Even his fiancée had no idea of what was going on with the CMS. He kept it all to himself. With going through everything, I've discovered that the CMS does drive. They will try and drive a wedge between the resident parent and the non-resident parent. And CMS, for them, there's also financial gains within the CMS when they do this.
What, bonuses?
No, it's not bonuses as such. What happens is if they can force a big enough wedge between the resident parent and non-resident parent, and they put the payments up so high that the non-resident parent can't afford to pay, they will end up putting the non-resident parent on what's called a DEO, deduction of earnings order. Once it gets to that level, the CMS makes money out of it. So
how much?
If a non-resident parent is given a payment of £100 a month to a resident parent,
yeah,
the non-resident parent pays £100 to the resident parent, but he also pays another 20% on top of that to the CMS. So the CMS gets 20 quid from there.
So how they have to find an extra 20% on top of their wages?
Yes, on top of what they're already paying, they have to find another 20%.
That sounds unjust.
It's crazy. You know, these people are already struggling for money, and then you're going to charge them even more money.
And what happens if they don't have the money?
Yeah, then you get into, they can take your house, basically. They can raid your bank account. They are the only corporation, whatever you want to call them, within this country that can go into your bank account and remove money from your bank account without any permission at all. One of the biggest things I found with the last 2 years is that nobody takes any notice of what the non-resident parent is going through. You look at all the media that goes out, and the media is always about how the CMS benefits the resident parent.
I've seen it, deadbeat dads.
Deadbeat dads, yeah.
But we are here now talking about this because we're passionate to make a difference. And in your journey to try and get justice, what have you come across? Have you found any answers?
No, I have not found any. All I've come across is any time I try and get anywhere, I get a door shut on me. I started off with talking to the CMS. I phoned the CMS to try and find out what was going on, where all these figures had come from. My first phone call with the CMS, I got on to a guy, and he pulled Gavin's files up on the screen, and he couldn't explain any of the figures. It was a really weird conversation. He was like, yeah, I can't explain this. I asked him where the £26,000 additional income come from. He couldn't explain it. He said, let me get back to you.
Did he?
He didn't personally, no. But a few days later, I had one of the weirdest telephone conversations I've ever had in my life. A guy phoned me up from the CMS, and his opening line was, all telephone conversations from the CMS are recorded. This telephone conversation is not being recorded. And he emphasised the fact that the telephone conversation was not being recorded. At the time, I didn't really get the significance of what was going on.
Did you not think to record it yourself at that point?
No.
But you weren't savvy?
I wasn't savvy enough at the time. I was still in shock from losing Gavin. I still didn't understand what was going on. And yeah, if I'd known then what I know now, I would have recorded that telephone conversation.
So what happened in that telephone conversation?
So it was a bit strange. He gave me his name, explained that he was going to talk to me about Gavin's case, etc., and said, I can't give you yes and no answers, but if you ask me questions, I will answer them as best as I can. So I asked him, I said basically, so where has this £26,000 come from? He says, I can't answer that. I says, okay, I believe that the £26,000 additional income is a fictitious figure, it's been made up. His response was, I'm not going to argue with you, Mr. Briggs. Listen to my tone of voice, I'm not going to argue with you. Now I take that as a, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I said to him, so I believe that the £16,000 arrears is a fictitious figure. And again, he said, yeah, I'm not going to argue with Mr. Briggs. Listen to my tone of voice, I'm not going to argue with you. I then went on to say, I believe that the CMS was trying to take payments over and above a court order. And he gave me the same response. We chatted a little bit longer. I give him his due, he was trying to help me. He was probably putting his job on the line, but he was trying to help me. We chatted a bit more. He told me that I needed to go and speak to my MP. He told me that basically we need to try and get some justice for Gavin. He ended the conversation. He said, right, I'm going to end this conversation now. I'm going to phone you back in 10 minutes. So that's what happened. He ended the conversation. 10 minutes later, he phoned me back. And this time, he was almost a different person. Was the phone call being recorded then? I thought it was at the time, but I've subsequently found out that it wasn't. Right. Yeah. What I did was I applied to the CMS for the transcripts of my telephone conversations with the CMS, because that first telephone conversation is a damning conversation. Strangely enough, the CMS have redacted that part of the conversation. He phoned me back and he says, right, I'm now phoning you officially, basically. And we started on the same conversation, and he asked me the question, are you administrator of Gavin's estate? Well, at the time, it was still early days, and I was dealing with Gavin's estate. So I was dealing with the bank, I was dealing with all his credit cards, his phone, all of Gavin's stuff, and everybody was dealing with me. So as far as I was aware, I was the administrator of his estate. So I said, well, yeah, I'm the administrator, I'm looking after the estate. He says, right, okay, then have you got anything to prove that? Have you got the paperwork? I says, well, no, I'm not aware that I need paper. He says, yeah, you need paperwork to prove that you're administrator of the estate. And unless you've got that paperwork, we can't talk to you. And from that moment on, the CMS has refused to talk to me about anything to do with Gavin. Although I'm his father, they will not talk to me. And now comes the real irony. So I looked into getting the administrator of the estate. That was my first step in trying to get answers and justice. There's a hierarchy in who can apply to be administrator of the estate. The hierarchy is next of kin, which in Gavin's case is his children. All 3 children at the time were minors, so they cannot be administrator of the estate. So you would think it goes to the next of kin, blood relative? No. It goes to the ex-wives. So the ex-wives are the only people who can apply to be administrator. I wrote to MPs, I've written to my MP, I've written to Arlene Sugden, I've written to Baroness Stedman Scott. The list of MPs I've written to and contacted is endless. And none of them have helped me in any way. My MP helped me to a point, and I did find out that with the administrator, there is a thing called clearing off. So if nobody applies to be administrator of the estate for 6 months, like the first next of kin, the next person down the hierarchy can apply for the role of administrator, which is what I did. Again, it's a long drawn out process, backwards and forwards, emails, and eventually I managed to get to the point where the probate office were going to issue me the paperwork, the role of administrator. They said, yeah, we'll get the papers in the post, you'll have them within the week. Great. Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
Gave it a week, nothing turned up. Phone up the probate office. Yeah, there's been a change. We can't issue them to you. Why not? We need permission from the next of kin for you to apply. So I had to write to both ex-wives asking permission to be administrator of my own son's estate. One of them never responded, the other one refused.
Surely every case should be individually assessed, because there's some injustice clearly going on here. And you're trying to do the best thing for everyone involved, and that they have an interest in taking that money for themselves, not for everybody's greater interest.
Yeah, the problem is, if we get administrator of the estate, the CMS has to give me Gavin's files.
Right.
And Gavin's files will basically incriminate CMS, but it will also incriminate the the resident parents, because I've subsequently found out that the resident parents get all the same letters that Gavin would have got. So the resident parents know that the CMS had got it wrong. I also know that the financial investigation was instigated by the resident parents. And I also know that the CMS will have talked to the resident parents about the case.
So it seems like they both have blood on their hands.
I would say so, yeah.
How many suicides are there?
There's a guy called Brian Hudson who's done a lot of research into this, and he's put it down to, put the figures down to there could be 1,000 suicides a year attributed to the CMS. The facts, he's got the statistics, and these are proper, it's been peer reviewed and they're proper statistics. If you are in arrears with the CMS, you are 14% times more likely to take your own life. And that is not just deadbeat dads, that is both women and men. It is not gender related. You see the media always comes out with deadbeat dads, deadbeat dads, deadbeat dads.
It affects
it's
women
not,
as well.
You'll notice that I don't say dads or mums. It's resident parent and non-resident parents, and the CMS lets down both. The CMS lets down resident parents as much as it lets down non-resident parents.
So I know you've done some serious research to what's going on, and I believe you got a coroner's report. Can you tell me about that? What they said about Gavin's?
Yeah, so because Gavin was a suicide, there has to be a coroner's report. There has to be a coroner's inquest. And at the time, I believed that the coroner's inquest was going to be my route to justice. I did a lot of research into the coroner, what his duties are, what he's going to do in the inquest, what the questions are, all his responsibilities. And one of his responsibilities is to prevent future occurrences of the same set of sequences that led to Gavin's suicide, which is called the Prevention of Future Deaths Act. And that was the road I wanted to go down with the coroner.
How did it go?
It was an absolute nightmare. I used to believe this country was just. And having dealt with coroner and the coroner's court and what happened in the coroner's court, there is no justice in this country. We went to the coroner on the first, we had a first what's called pre-inquest hearing. That was called by us, effectively. We wanted to talk to the coroner. I talked to him about what had happened with Gavin. At the first pre-inquest hearing, he seemed to understand and listen. So all he said was, gather all the evidence and get it to me. So that's what we did. We gathered evidence. I got facts, figures. We did spreadsheets. I had all the proof of everything that I had with Gavin's wages to prove that all the figures the CMS came up with were completely incorrect. At that point, the coroner called a second pre-inquest hearing. I went to the second pre-inquest hearing, and Gavin's fiancée was there as well. I spent an hour and a half arguing with the coroner. The coroner would not accept any of the evidence that I presented to him. He refused to listen to what I was saying. He tried to tell me at one point that Gavin's dealings with the CMS was the same as having the dealings with a bank. It was the same as having a loan with a bank. Came away from that and we didn't know where to do, what to do, and he was still going ahead with the inquest. About 3 or 4 days before the actual inquest, this lawyer contacted me. She actually came to me and said, she'd come across the case. I'm not quite sure how she came across it, can't remember now, but she came across the case, seen what was going on, and she said, this is a complete travesty of justice. I want to represent you. Do you want me to represent you? So I went, yeah, fine. So I took the next day off work. She actually phoned me on a Sunday. I was sat in a services car park driving home, and she contacted me. I sat in a service car park speaking to her for an hour and a half, talking about the case, and she says, right, you need to come and see me on Monday. So I took the day off work Monday, drove down to see her, gave her all the evidence, presented everything to her, and she says, yeah, this is wrong, what's going on. We need to postpone this inquest because it was in a matter of days. So she applied to the coroner for a postponement of the inquest. She was only just come on the case. She needed time to get the case, to get all her evidence sorted out, to get it all presented.
Yeah.
He refused.
What does that suggest to you? Sounds like his injustice.
It sounds dodgy. It sounds really dodgy. Why would he? The solicitor couldn't understand why he wouldn't postpone it. She used to deal with inquests all the time. She was an inquest specialist. So anyway, she says, fine, what we'll do is we'll go to the inquest and we'll go again to try and get a postponement. So the family turned up to the inquest, myself, my wife, my sister, the fiance, Gavin's fiance, and her brother. So we turn up to the inquest, and straight away my solicitor starts talking to the coroner, telling him that she wants a postponement. She read precedents out to him where there had been postponements on the similar sort of grounds, previous cases. Yeah. She had this guy tied in knots. You know, when somebody gets nervous, they start shuffling paperwork. He was shuffling paperwork on his desk. He was nervous. You could see he was nervous. He still refused to postpone. Yeah, still refused to postpone the case. So at that point, my solicitor said, right, that's it, we're walking out. So Gavin's side of the family got up and walked out of the inquest. The solicitor, her hope was that the coroner would, because we weren't there, postpone the inquest. He refused. He carried on with the inquest. And there was an issue that Gavin hadn't told his fiancée that he had 3 children. He only told her that he had 2. Oh. And ironically, his fiancée found out about that on the day that Gavin committed suicide. So justifiably, there wasn't much in the way of conversations. She was obviously upset about it. But she never told Gavin that she knew. She just didn't answer his phone calls. And I have all the text messages between the two of them to prove that Gavin never knew that Lindsay had found out about the 3rd child. I can prove that, refutably prove it. And Gavin's fiancée will also back that up. She never told Gavin about the 3rd child, that she knew about the 3rd child. The coroner had picked up on this, and the coroner's, his reasons, or the reasons he gave for Gavin taking his own life was Precious' life and the fact that Gavin knew that Lindsay had found out about the 3rd child. So in fact, the coroner made up his own story in the inquest. As you can imagine, we was absolutely gobsmacked. I just do not understand how a man of that standing can fabricate his own reasons for Gavin taking his own life. I just don't understand it at all. So I'm now at a point where legally, officially, as his father, there is nothing I can do about getting any sort of answers.
So you are doing something right here, right now.
I know.
Right here, right now. We're raising awareness of this injustice.
But the country, legally, you know, I'm clutching at straws now, trying to get justice for Gavin, trying to get answers, and trying to hold the CMS to account for suicides. And the sad thing is, since Gavin did what he did, I know somebody else who's done exactly the same thing. And she's working with us now, or the sister is working with us now. And she has had exactly the same thing with the coroner's court. And even in this case, the guy that committed suicide left a suicide note, which Gavin didn't. And in the suicide note, he named the CMS and the DWP as to the reason why he committed suicide. And the coroner, again, refused to name the CMS as why he took his own life. Again, the same as mine, she said this time that it was down to pressures of life.
I'm lost for words.
I don't know, this is my opinion, this is what I believe. And some of the people within the group believe the same thing. If anybody gets the CMS on a suicide and sets a precedent, it will open a lid on a can of worms that they cannot afford. As soon as somebody gets that coroner's verdict that the CMS caused that person to take his own life or her own life, it opens a can of worms for the CMS.
Where does this stem, in your opinion?
Government.
They're complicit.
Yeah, I mean, I went to my MP initially, and he helped me to a point. He got me the letters that said I could go for the administration. He wrote to the CMS, and then he just stopped. He ignored my emails. I can email him now, and nothing.
Is there an answer? You're an intelligent man. You must have thought about this. We're trying to be unemotional, which is very difficult in your situation. But you're logical. What is the answer?
That's a tough one. That is. I think one of the biggest things will be to take the financial benefits out of it for the CMS. If you take the 20%, well, it's 24% because they take 4% from the resident parent as well. You take that out of it, there's no incentive for the CMS to drive people to DEOs. The CMS made, I think last year they made £40 million profit last year.
Wow.
40 million. Where does that profit go?
Where does it go?
Where does it go? And what's it for?
Do we know?
No, I don't know. No, but people have tried to find out, but nobody seems to know where that profit goes. The other thing is take out the silver bullet. Get rid of the silver bullet. The parental alienation. Get rid of parental alienation. Don't make it financially incentive for the resident parent for that silver bullet. And the other thing is, if they do try the false allegations, if somebody makes false allegations and they are proved to be wrong, they should be held to account.
That's been extremely insightful, Ian. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening to me, giving me a voice.
Please don't give up. And we need people like yourself to raise awareness to stop this injustice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.